Why is Antarctica the fifth largest landmass on the planet, has never been explored, while we witness strange anomalies from there? Since World War II, it has been off limits, and we want to know why. We want to go down there, we want physical evidence. In the past 50 years, most of the research that has been done is on a digital level, meaning without physical corroboration. Since there are no roads, bridges, and infrastructure, visiting ancient sites and exploring reported areas of interest is expensive. Hence, we need financing or real venture capital to go down there and find the truth. We believe that this will be well returned due to interest in the venture, based on other documentaries and films of Antarctica. Let's explore the mystery and see what we have learned from research and key military witnesses.
Are there things we don't know that maybe we will never know? And that's the enigma of Antarctica. It is truly one of the most curious, inhospitable, and unworldly-like places in the world. Here is New Schwabenland. This is an actual map. This area also has, like the dry valleys, an area where no ice accumulates. They call these spots oases. German soldiers even growing their own crops in the summer. This is the presumed location of Base 211, the New Berlin base. Over 100 U-boats in the Wolf convoy, the Führer's convoy, the largest U-boats, which may have shepherded out all of the craft that was being worked on in Germany at the Skoda Works, which is now Czech Republic. The Allies and the Russians, they didn't find any of the craft. Could be that they went right here to those mountains, this protected area. This is where Operation High Jump was coming. A 6-month expedition led by our Admiral Byrd, and he said that we may be confronting an enemy that can fly pole to pole at incredible speeds. Operation High Jump was confronted with craft that came out of the water and that had some kind of laser that sliced one of our destroyers called the USS Murdoch in half. And the flyover of Washington, D.C., the famous crafts, most researchers would agree that those were craft that came out of Antarctica. Something under the ice, an airstrip, what looks like snowmobile tracks, some trails, maybe even some people walking around it. And now this is what you'll find today. The coordinates are exactly where the German Conan base is. And also all around Antarctica, as I was looking for discs under the ice, you can find them. You can find some of these strange anomalies that look very much like some kind of disc. And now you have what could be pyramids. And I've located 3 areas of pyramids. So, potential for an alien base? Yes, there is very compelling Google Earth pictures of what looks like this. So the question is, are they ours or are they theirs? Well, these are some other interesting ones. Are these artifacts or these could be real? These look very much like the step pyramids of Saqqara. And nature doesn't really do anything in these kind of perfect right angles. Appears to have been crafted by an intelligent people. The Argentinians had set up a base here and were working out of here. And this is where supposedly the black goo comes from. What is the black goo? Well, it is this AI substance that can be used to rapidly clone any life form. It was brought to Earth by a benevolent ET group shortly after the Toba eruption 74,000 years ago. The idea was that we were very susceptible to a takeover. So the black goo was brought to Earth and stored. The black goo was taken back to the UK. It got loose. It could be that it's taken on new forms. If it's AI, it has some kind of intelligence of its own.
In fact, when I was down there, I took it upon myself to talk to anybody who had information about Antarctica, from other sea captains that were taking excursions down there to anybody on one of the 6 bases that we visited during my expedition. And my line of questioning was the same with everybody: is, have you heard of anything paranormal or extraterrestrial, such as supposedly there are 3 motherships poking through the ice, and they've been known since the 1970s, and our alphabet agencies have named them Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria. And I think I've pinpointed one of them. I do a conference presentation. In fact, I'll be speaking at the MUFON Symposium in Dallas, Texas this July, and I'll be giving my Hidden Anomalies of Antarctica talk. And in it, I will show a location which happens to be in the German claim in the 1930s, New Schwabenland, of what looks like a massive craft under the ice. I think it would be one of those 3. So definitely want to go to the Conan base. There's actually a seasonal West German on old maps, but now it's a Germany base. They still do research out there. And in 2013, they were excavating the site, and I show pictures of what it looks like. Some remote viewers from the Farsight Institute also did remote viewing of this location and determined it's some kind of massive machine, long defunct, no longer operational, but built for giants. So we definitely want to go to the Conan base, and then while we're in the Queen Maud land, as it's known now, but in the time of pre-World War II, New Schwabenland, go to the Schumacher Ponds, which are lakes that never freeze because of the geothermal activity. And in the hills nearby, called the Schumacher Hills, also never freeze. That's where base 211 was supposed to be. So snooping that out, I don't know, maybe we can get down and get some filming under the ice and change history, because it's a pretty good chance that this area of New Schwabenland was hit with nuclear bombs in 1958 during Project Argus, still a classified program, still top secret, can't get much information. They say they were shooting nukes up into the atmosphere to test if they could get the pollution to leave through these holes. But if we were to bring Geiger counters down there, Joseph, and find out that that area had been nuked, that would be historic. That would be earth-changing. Similarly, I know we're one of the 3 pyramids, the best one, the 2 kilometer by 2 kilometer by 2 kilometer by 2 kilometer, perfectly 4-sided pyramid in the Ellsworth Range. And ALE, this Antarctic Logistic Expedition Group, has assured me they know where it is. We could land there, although they never have, but to also investigate that. And if we were to find out that it was fashioned by intelligent hands, that's also a game changer. That's absolutely historic, and we certainly want to put that on the itinerary for filming.
What's up, everybody? This is JP. I'm going to share something really interesting here on Google. Before they take it out, share it with your friends, leave a comment. Let's get it on. This is one of the major volcanoes here on Antarctica. It's a beautiful boy. All right, everybody knows what Stonehenge is, right? But this one is really interesting. Let's do the measurements. Let's measure the shadow first. let's go 130. Oops. Yeah, it's like a 130 around there. Okay. Beautiful tower structure. Cool looking windows. Leave your comments. Tell me what you think this is. JP out. Akuria mate. I love you guys.
Remote viewing is a meditation technique using consciousness whereby the remote viewer can see targets remotely in space and time. It can be so accurate the military uses it for intelligence purposes. We tasked a trained and accurate remote viewer to view sites in Antarctica to corroborate our research. Not only did she corroborate the research, things she viewed were mentioned in books by Radu Sinamar, which she has not read or had knowledge of.
Welcome to my 2025 Antarctica expedition presentation. So these are the Schumacher Ponds at the Machri Station owned by India. So these Schumacher Ponds are the only freshwater source that aren't frozen in Antarctica. So my findings as to why they aren't frozen are from radioactive elements, which is a consequence of geothermal activity from radioactive decay. And elements like uranium can be moved naturally or artificially through experimental or manipulated situations. So radioactive elements are the main heat source here, as well as plasma energy and potential elements in the Earth's crust from rifting volcanic activity. The acidic fumes from a volcanic eruption can break down the rock around the vents and are toxic to breathe, with elements like sulfur dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, and carbon monoxide can spread into different sources. However, there are only 2 active volcanoes in Antarctica, Mount Erebus and Deception Island, which are far from the ponds. So this would also mean the other areas would be unfrozen too. So my theory and remote viewing has revealed they are warmed artificially from experimental or manipulated sources. So I found the South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands near the Schumacher Ponds. As you can see on the left, there's one main one, and then they have a bunch of little ones underneath. And then on the right, you see the Schumacher Ponds just off the shore from the islands. So the South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands are remote and inhospitable islands owned by British Overseas Territory by King Charles III. They do have an active volcano there, and this is the island's current flag, which is very interesting. So if you zoom in on the right, you can see the armor, shields, and a moose on top with 6 horns. On the bottom, their motto is Leo Teram, Propriam, Protogots in Latin. And in English, this translates to let the lion protect his own land. So this is a photo I found of the South Georgia Island. From remote viewing, there are radioactive elements coming from these islands towards the Schumacher Ponds. And then this is the Russian station by Schumacher Ponds. And this is the only base that I saw so far to have a worker shed, which is around here, that looks like this. I remote viewed this area and they had a high-tech laser plasma device, which is interesting because usually people cut metal with laser or plasma, but I saw both in this device. And as you can see, they have all these different metal parts over here, so they're using highly advanced technology on this base. This is more photos of the Russian base. And Russia is one of the most widely represented countries in Antarctica. They own 5 polar stations and 1 polar base. I also found that they have a barn with animals in it, and there is black goo AI in the back of the shed. Moving on. This is the Maud Rise, which is close to the Schumacher Ponds over here. The Maud Rise is an oceanic plateau in an irregular area of open water surrounded by sea ice. This is the location I remote viewed previously and saw an energy whirlpool in this area on an energetic ley line held by ET forces. So this is what the Maud Rise looks from a bird's eye view with the ice around and the big hole in the center. And this is what it looks like close up. Upon further research, I have found HAARP, which is the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, stimulates plasma waves, which creates radio waves into the water, and it becomes more complex near Earth's magnetic poles. So this, in conjunction with the intensity of Antarctica's magnetic fields, can cause physical effects in the water. Rapid and sharp changes of the magnetic fields can create geomagnetic storms or intense tropical cyclones. And from decomposition of natural gas in submarine slopes create ultrastatic pressure from heat and energy to create movement and energy vortexing in the water. Near this area, I also found an aircraft hangar disguised under the water with advanced aircrafts that look similar to these ones. So there is a magnetic anomaly in Antarctica. Magnetic energy surrounds the entire outer rim of the continent in a circular motion, charging it with energy and sending it out into the Earth. The main energy center is in the middle, which is known as the South Pole. As you can see, there is a circular rim around the South Pole, which shows the energy it emits. I remote viewed underneath the South Pole and found a free energy source. Energy is carried by electromagnetic waves in the water, and it creates a dome-like shape underneath the ice and is very expansive and powerful. I also remote viewed a submarine underneath the South Pole, which is guarding this energy source, and HAARP technology increases methods for submarine communication and the ability to remotely map the terrestrial subsurface. Inner Earth. Under the South Pole in the ice is an ice tunnel similar to the photo on the right. There is also a pathway in the outer rim of the ice that connects to inner Earth. I found a mountain cave entrance to inner Earth across from the South Pole, similar to the photo on the left. There are different routes under the ice, and ETs heavily monitoring this area. Under the ice in the middle, there is a huge energy generator which looks similar to the tank on the left, which is made from a plasma light source. Plasma is the most extreme state of matter of electrically charged gas. It only exists when there's enough energy to strip atoms apart. So flames, stars, including the sun, and lightning are hot balls of plasma. Plasma conducts electricity and responds to magnetic fields. So, with the high intensity of the South Pole's magnetism and combination of plasma creates a powerful energy source. This is the plasma source. It can be turbulent because electric and magnetic fields feed back on each other. However, it emits beautifully powered light and energy, and it is often referred to as the central sun.
Sea ice going all the way to the northern tip of the Palmer Peninsula, just about where your cursor is. And then you can see the southern tip of South America. That's the closest continental connection to Antarctica, and that's the Drake Passage, of course, between there. So when the ice is this far out, you really can't take a boat there, because where we were sailing in the top quarter of the Palmer Peninsula, on the top side of the peninsula, all that ice is largely gone. There were a couple times we did have to turn around one time trying to go through the Lemire Passage, and then another time when we were going to the Vernansky Ukrainian base that we also had to be up there, all hands on deck with poles pushing away the ice as we slowly went through with our boat. So it was a hairball trip, I got to tell you. If you go overboard, you've got about 1 minute to get rescued before you succumb to hypothermia. The water is sub-freezing, and the whole trip was just really wrought with danger. But fortunately, nobody died. But one guy got hurt pretty bad when a rogue wave hit our sailboat, and he would have gone over had he not been strapped in with a cable to a life vest. But he did bash up his leg pretty good. So it was a tough trip. And so many people say, oh, I want to go down there. That sounds great. But you got to know what you're getting into. And this is what you're getting into. You're getting into all this sea ice in the winter down there, which, of course, seasons are opposite. Our summer's their winter. And you really have to wait until the period starting right now, because mid-November until early March is the only window of opportunity to go down there. And so I'm doing this research now on my new book, and I have this research assistant that just kind of fell in my lap, and he's been great. We communicate every day, and I share some of my stuff with him. And the reason I call this navigating under the frozen continent is because we've come into some maps that have been fairly recently distributed on the internet. People can find it now. But he speaks German fluently. He's Dutch, but he's fluent in German. So he's able to translate the U-boat instructions to get down under the ice. So the U-boats would have to travel basically under the pack ice, which does last all year round. It doesn't always go away. But just about the bottom of Antarctica there, a little over to the right, yeah, right where your cursor is, that's New Schwabenland. That's where these maps for the U-boats picture them going into under the frozen continent.
I have come across some of those maps in the past, but you were able to find some that were very much clearer. So and you know the history about those maps. So yeah, this is the 1938-1939 New Schwabenland expedition. So yeah, you want to tell us about that expedition, because yeah, this is all about how the Nazis were able to get under the ice pack and establish their base 211.
Base 211 and the New Berlin base. We've come to discover they are two separate entities. And the New Berlin base is mentioned on one of these maps we're going to look at, showing the under ice topography. Really amazing. And I just got the backstory of how these maps came to be. It was right around, right after the fall of the Soviet Union. So the early 1990s, a journalist in Moscow was at a flea market, and there were these boxes that still had the address to go to a command center in Berlin, Germany. And there were all these duplicate maps and a whole bunch of other stuff he bought on the black market, and then as a journalist went through them and found it. But in this particular picture, you see some of the Third Reich soldiers pre-World War II going down and making a land claim in New Schwabenland, which on today's globes is called Queen Maud Land. And it's also part of the Norwegian claims. In fact, there's a couple Norwegian bases that we'll see that are directly over this under ice passage that Frank, my research assistant in Holland, has been able to map out. But why don't we go up just to the second slide in this show, and just to say that if we look back on some of the maps, especially this 1513 Piri Reis map, just 21 years after Columbus made his first trip over, you have a map with a near perfect coastal outline of South America. And then it extends down and around just about where the continental Antarctica would be on a map. So these old maps, which is going to be a chapter in my book based on Charles Hapgood's book called Map of the Ancient Sea Kings, that show Antarctica not years, not decades, but centuries before it was discovered in 1820. So it's truly remarkable that all of these older maps have Antarctica down there. What did they know that we didn't know until 200 years ago? So what's also interesting about this, Michael, is that where the arrow points, that is now an ice shelf, and it's permanently covered with ice. And they see there's a couple islands down there. They have done sonar scans over the ice shelf and found that indeed there are islands down there. So what it looks like is this map was copied from much older maps. In fact, it even says so in the liner notes in the Piri Reis map, that it came from maps all the way down back from the time of Ptolemy, the ancient Greek, and also the Library of Alexandria. So these maps are quite telling too, and I think they give a good story. And you go to the next slide, you have in southern part of South America, the southern tip, you actually see the Patagonian giants. And there are many illustrations of these giants that live there. And then this Monte Urbano map, less than 100 years after Columbus's voyage, also shows all the way around a landmass. And in a couple points, there are openings. So that's kind of interesting. I know a lot of flat earthers would say that's the way into inner Earth or something like this, but I would interpret that as saying this could be passages into and under the ice in Antarctica.
Perry Reese map, and I know I've looked at the Orontius Phineas map. I mean, they do depict Antarctica when it was ice free, and my speculation was that these maps must date to like 9,700 BC, before the end of the Younger Dryas, where the sea levels kind of like rose tremendously. I mean, some estimate like 800 feet. So yeah, do you kind of recall that information and how the rising sea levels and the possibility of the Earth's shifting poles led to Antarctica being buried under all this ice?
And that's exactly right, because at a location called Mount Buckley, which is at the top of the Beardmore Glacier, there are fossils of megafauna and megaflora from the time when Antarctica could only have been a steaming hot jungle, when ferns could grow and when dinosaurs could roam. In fact, there are some species of dinosaurs which are cold-blooded reptile creatures that could only have lived in Antarctica when it was a jungle. And in fact, they found them in several locations, but Mount Buckley is the most important one. Well, this here is another map. This was created by the Germans for the New Schwabenland expedition. You can see they named all these mountains and mountain ranges with German names. But I would like to focus on the lower left-hand corner there, the Schumacher Seengroupie. That is a group of lakes, yes, with some hills around them, also called the Schumacher Hills. And this is where the seaplane landed in the largest lake. And from there, the search party left to the Schumacher Hills area, where they found Point 211, Base 211 is right there in the Schumacher Hills. This is in the book called Black Sun by Henry Stevens. He even says that this is called a Arctic oasis, that it's warm enough that the soldiers would occasionally come above ground, because we assume their base was largely underground or under the ice, but they would come up, because I'm German too. I love sitting in the sun and getting a suntan, but they could also raise some crops there, which I would tell you is pretty near to impossible, because everywhere else, it's just so thick with ice up on the polar plateau, 2 miles thick. But here you can see in the next slide, this is a Google Earth shot I took of the Schumacher Ponds. So the hills then are right on all sides of it. There are 2 bases there, which is really interesting too. There's an Indian base right about where your cursor is, and then a Russian base on another lake. And both of those bases have long piers that go out into the lake. You zoom in on them on Google Earth. It's really fascinating. And these lakes never freeze, so they must be getting heat from geothermal sources. After World War II, they kept their permanent bases there year-round, especially at the Neumayer base. But who knows what they have going on here? My new research assistant, Frank, he says that they turned over this base that they found to the UN. And I'll have to get some more information how he knows that. But apparently there is a massive reptilian base right under the Schumacher Ponds that's also heated with geothermal energy coming up that heats these ponds. And it's quite livable. You could go around and do your business just wearing a t-shirt.
It's very important right there that you have these warm ponds that clearly are heated geothermally so that they don't freeze over. during the year, that kind of points to there being geothermal activity underneath that area of Neuschwabenland. And scientific studies have come out showing that where you have thermal activity underneath the ice sheets, you actually have habitable zones. And that's exactly what people like Bill Tompkins, Henry Stevens have been saying, that the Germans were able to find and build bases underneath the ice sheets. And if because of the geothermal heat, that this made it livable.
Yep, and remember what Admiral Dolan said in 1943, that the U-boat fleet has found for the Fuhrer an impregnable fortress in a land of ice. I'm paraphrasing the quote, but basically he was, I would say, suggesting that it was in Antarctica. Could be Greenland, which the Germans did have bases at the northern tip of Greenland. The Thule base, which has been taken over by the U.S., is now a U.S. base in north of Greenland. So the mysteries of what lie under the ice is certainly one of the great questions today, especially if anyone is interested in World War II history, because I think we know that the Germans didn't just lose the war and drop out and go away, that they did set up a Fourth Reich. Jim Marrs, of course, wrote a book on it. Your research, my research is that they set up shop in South America and Antarctica with a lot of their high technology that they got out of Germany at the end of the war.
See, my surrogate mother was Viola Armstrong. She had a son named Neil.
Oh, really?
As you know, the story goes, he went down to Antarctica, had a heart attack, stroke combo, and came back. And then there was stuff on the internet. And I had to look at Buzz and ask him, Buzz, what happened down there, Bud? Buzz did say one thing, and it just stuck in my head. It's the way he said it. He just said, we thought out things we shouldn't. And if Buzz saw something, I don't know what it was, but it was enough to give the man a heart attack. So if there are beings down there, I would think these beings never planned on us. They've been there, they came in millions of years ago. They've been under ice for millions of years. I don't think they were expecting us.
Let me ask something about Buzz Aldrin, that there was this very cryptic tweet that came out during his stay down there. He said, "We have seen the faces of evil and we're all in danger." And this is right before he had his heart attack. And I can tell you, logistically, to do a medical evacuation from the interior of Antarctica is very difficult and very expensive. So something must have majorly gone wrong.
To underscore the fact that when the C-130 crew had dropped them off, they disappeared. And then when they went to try to find them, there was nothing at the National Science Foundation camp at all. Nothing.
They were
moving.
gone. A dozen
totally
scientists.
Gone. And when they did show up, they had been missing for a couple of weeks. And Brian S. and the C-130 flight crew were then sent back. And they were expecting that they would see this group of scientists out to meet their plane, doing this, yelling something. And he said they were lined up like birds on a wire. They were all kind of next to each other, and most of them had their heads down looking at their feet when the C-130 was pulling up. And that somebody had to go from the flight crew over to the scientists and direct them to get onto the plane. And they talked about how not one single scientist said one word. Most of them walked with their looking down at the ground. Brian said when they got them loaded up, he said to his flight chief, "What in the world? Where have they been?" And the flight chief said, "I don't know. We can't get a word out of them." And during the flight, Brian went and sat down next to one of the scientists, and he said he leaned over and touched the scientist's knee, and the man never looked up. And he said, it was as if we were dealing with 12 or 15 people who had suffered post-traumatic shock syndrome, that they were unnaturally frozen in their position and no speaking, and that they all looked afraid. That one of the SEALs that I have talked to that is not in the video said that as they walked for a mile or 2 miles into these very strange created architectures, they reached a point where something started coming through the walls out into the air. At first, it would go in and out of visibility, and then they realized that their minds were being manipulated. And then when they could see it clearly, and it was coming in and out like a television signal in the air, it appeared to be covered with scales, like an armadillo, the surface of an armadillo. And he said, when you are face to face with something like that, and you are trained in military to kill, but you're dealing with something you've never seen, and it can go in and out of visibility, and you know that your mind is being taken over by something that you are fighting. He said that happened in one of those corridors, and that was 2012.
There's definitely something in Antarctica.